My name's Mike Hall, and I'm the president of the Edinburgh Theosophical Society.
Great, yeah. And so I'm just going to ask, like, your perspective or experience of the soul.
Okay, Dawn, I've been thinking about this, and it's a difficult one to answer. I've been asking people their versions, and I've come to the conclusion, for me, it's the part of you that is never born, never dies, like an eternal you. Or
Right.
we call it the higher self, or the monad in Theosophy, you know that.
Yeah.
So to me, it's about moving towards a frequency.
Yeah, okay.
Like, for example, I've just come today having had an aromatherapy massage by someone who's really highly qualified, and she gave me these oils for different. I hope this is not going off the track.
No, not at all.
She gave me different oils, the expensive oils, and one was Inner Child, other one was Valor, and she also gave me frankincense on here, you know, to increase the frequency. So I really respond to that. You know, I really respond to that sort of the body is the temple.
So like an energetic frequency that exists. So is it inside our bodies or?
It's both. I feel it's inside and outside. I think it's inside and outside. So, very much into the role of fascia, and the fascia, the new science of fascial science, I think, has a relationship with the soul.
So that's the connecting.
It's like a connecting tissue from the soles of your feet to the top of your head, and it runs through the body. The best way to describe it is like train lines. Like train lines, they go in different. They run in different ways through the body. Like the deep front line, the deep back line, the spiral line. So they cross like this. Deep front line is here. Deep back line. They run through the body like train lines.
So do you think that's how the soul energy moves through your body, or?
Well, there's growing understanding that there is a growing relationship between the fascial lines and the meridians in Chinese health. So I think they run in the same, and the two are coming together in a sort of understanding, I would suggest. And so the prana or the chi that comes from wherever, either inside or outside, manifests itself through the body, through these fascial lines, and the meridians, they are connected.
Right, so there's the energy, and do you think that's is that the soul, or is that just like life force energy type?
Well, as you know, in Theosophy, they talk about Fohat, which is like the universal, like God life force. So I always ask the question, how did that manifest itself on the physical? If the body is the temple, how does it manifest itself? So I understand it comes from like the cerebral spinal fluid, which contains something called the original matrix of health. So I believe that to be true. So I then ask, why did we become unhealthy? You know, it obviously gets blocked through our ignorance or lifestyle. We block that original matrix of health. So Fohat is described as the God-like energy, or the light within the liquid light, or the divine nectar. So I've understood that it manifests itself on the physical frame as this cerebral spinal fluid, which is the calling from the sacrum to the base of the skull. Right? That's like what they call the core link.
Yeah.
And so in Qigong exercise, you try and pump that fluid up so that it detoxes the brain. Through the brain is set up to irrigate this cerebral spinal fluid. And so therefore you don't get things like dementia and Alzheimer's, because the brain is irrigated with this matrix of health.
So do you access like tuning into your soul in a physical way like that then, through the expression of the cerebral spinal fluid? So as the conscious movement of that through Qigong exercises?
Yeah, absolutely. Because one way of looking at it is that, you may know in Theosophy they talk about the different seven levels, of which this is the physical form.
Mm-hmm.
and they call it the implicate order. This is the implicate order is going back to the Godhead, if you like, or the soul, or the Godhead. So this is not the implicate order, but the Fohat pours out of the implicate order, a bit like a hologram.
Okay, sorry. Can you just explain Fohat and implicate order?
Well, so I think a way of putting this is the world of form.
Yeah. So Fohat is the world of form.
No, Fohat pours out of the so-called implicate order, which contains no thing, no form, but it contains everything in it.
Okay, yeah. So like the primordial chaos, like the abyss that everything was born out of. Unlimited potential.
Yeah.
Like the womb space of creation.
Yeah, we can't see that through the senses.
Mm-hmm.
We can't see it, but I think we can access it through things like Tai Chi, fascia. I think we make that connection, because I believe the temple is the body.
So you connect to it through the body then?
Absolutely, yeah. I think, yeah, because you're like, as I've got older, I've become lighter, because the frequency is changing me to be more of a lighter being, where if you're not doing that, you're going to become heavy and dense. And so, if you're working with the Chi Prana, you're becoming a lighter frequency, more subtle, more spiritual, less dense. You know.
So the soul, in terms of it being, like, do you think that's it's your individual expression of that like greater energy?
I was told by a massage therapist that she was doing this massage called Lewin work, and when she looked at me, I had no clothes on at the time, but she said, "You're very unusual in the sense that your body is completely dichotomized between yin and yang," and I never knew that. She said most people are like Heinz 57, a bit of a mishmash. So she said you're completely like split down the middle between masculine and feminine. So that was interesting. And then I went on to teach Tai Chi and Qigong, and realised for me that was a soul expression, because I was bringing sort of like an Eastern or mindset into a Western reality. So, without sounding pretentious, I feel like I've done it before. This is my soul destiny to bring that through and teach it. Teach it, yeah, Tai Chi and Qigong.
Yeah.
Because I only realised this the second half of my life. I'm set up to do it, in a sense. That was like energy-wise and physically, I was set up to do it.
Okay, so do you think your individual soul has a purpose then, and that's what yours is?
Well, yeah, so it's self-evident, because you've heard of Saturn return. So my second Saturn return was lifted when I was given the opportunity to go into a corporate company where the amount I was being paid was like ridiculous compared to what I was getting paid prior. So the Saturn return lifted, and the money shackles came off, and then I go into a different period of experience through this teaching the Eastern arts to a Western audience. So the two came together, the second Saturn return, and then suddenly this opportunity came. So
you feel like the cosmic, the cosmology of how, the Saturn return. Sorry, just explaining into this. So that's like every 30 years-ish, is it?
Yeah.
And that's a cycle that comes round in your life that changes aspects for you to. Yeah. So you feel like there's this cosmic influence that is an opportunity for your soul to express itself.
Absolutely. Because I was teaching people at Bailey Gifford who I really liked, and I kept saying, I'm not really charging them enough, I enjoyed the relationship, but compared to what they're earning, this sounds a bit material, but compared to what they're earning, and I was thinking of saying, hey, do you want to pay a bit more? Then suddenly this opportunity came out of the blue to go in and teach Tai Chi, because our culture was recognising that people can't sit at their desks, they need to move. So it was a culmination of different factors, of which I was part of the drama.
Okay.
So what I'm trying to say, it wasn't just individual opportunity. So it was concurrent with the change in our society as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then, what do you think the relationship is between the cosmic energies and your individual soul?
Well, I could shift that to my love of music, because I was born not right in the middle of Beatlemania, but my older brothers and sisters, and so I gave it up from the Beatles to Beethoven. The Beatles split up at Saturn Return.
Mm-hmm.
Beethoven goes deaf at Saturn Return. So I was born into like a musical backdrop, if you like, and Carl Jung, he preempted, in my view, the coming of the Beatles, if you like, because his most profound dream he had was coming to Liverpool in 1928. And when you read the dream, there's no doubt he's describing where the Beatles started, in the cavern. It leaves you with no doubt if you read the dream, it's where the Beatles started. But he's preempting this in 1928.
I've not read that.
It's his most profound dream in his autobiography, Memories, Dreams, Reflections. And so I thought, why is he describing where the Cavern Club started? You know what? And so for me, it's because that was the greatest social change that took place in the 20th century, in my view. That youth culture, because before that, Britain was really like bigoted, racist in the 1950s. You know? Like people say that the current Queen changed that as well, because in the early 1950s, Great Britain was not a great place to be if you were black or Irish. You know, it was racist. But that Beatles 60s youth culture changed it. And then and then we had something like the thing is the skandhas in Buddhism. There's something called the skandhas, which my simple interpretation of that is where you take things from your previous life to the next life, and there's certain traits that manifest itself on the physical form. So this psychologist chap from Austria stopped me in conversation and said, "Were you ever a brilliant pianist in the past?" In the past, I said, "No, I've never played ever." He said, "You give the impression of playing the piano when you converse." So I understood. For me, that was what he's picking up on there is maybe a past life where I was a musician. And so, as you know, every time I go to the Usher Hall to watch a concert, I'm there right by the pianist. I can't get close enough to be by the pianist because I feel I'm picking up on something I've done in the past.
Yeah.
It's called the skandhas. It manifests itself through your DNA from one life to the other. It's very much in tune with Buddhism.
Okay, so is that sort of implies that your soul has a journey to manifest through each life?
Well, I broke the code to Beethoven's 7th Symphony. Beethoven encrypted the code in the second passage, of the second movement, and so that took me on a journey to understand why he encrypted certain pieces of music, and so that led me to understand that Beethoven was into Hindu mysticism, and so I'm picking up on the sound of the flute enchanting the serpent, if you like. The thing that made it work was I heard the breath from the flautist coming through the radio. She's playing the flute in the Albert Hall as part of the proms. So it doesn't work if you listen to it. If you don't hear the breath, it doesn't work. I've told people to go and listen, it doesn't work for them because they're not hearing it live. The key is the breath. And so that led me to understand that Beethoven is playing allegiance to something called the path of the perfected masters, where it was never written down, or it was only passed on through mantra from one generation to the other through this Indian mysticism. So Beethoven, to me, was aware of that. That's why he encrypted the passages in the music, so it could only be heard by those who could truly hear. And so so he was hiding it, and so I picked up on that when I listened to the 7th Symphony, and that led me on the journey to understand aspect of Madame Blavatsky's journey in India with the secret mantras. You know, she also experienced the secret mantras as well. So the Beethoven Theosophy thing with Blavatsky connects, it all comes together, if that's making sense to them.
Yeah, so do you think that people can leave parts of their soul journeys behind in music and doctrine and things like that then? Is that what you're saying with like Beethoven left a piece of his soul journey within his music for clues that you've picked up on that's helped you along yours?
Yeah, well, he's the only composer that I think it's fair to say that you can track his spiritual journey through his music from beginning to end. You can't do that with other composers, although they've created fantastic music, sublime music, but you don't really get to know them in terms of their own spiritual journey through the music. Beethoven is unique in that.
How is that?
Because you can split his career up into they call it the early period, the middle period, and the late period, and let's call the late period where the late quartets are like off the scale in terms of their spirituality. Someone asked him, I can't fathom these quartets, and he said they're not meant for you, they're meant for 2 generations ahead. So he said that at the time to someone who said, I can't make sense of this music, it's too like unusual, it's a bit strange. But Beethoven said it's 2 or 3 generations ahead I'm writing for, not you.
Right, so do you think that was to, like, what do you think he was hoping the intention was for generations?
Well, he's preempting the unfolding of consciousness through music, which I think we are now able to, if one is interested in doing so, take advantage of.
Right. That's a really good lead to one of my other questions, actually, about what do you think the relationship between consciousness and soul is? Do you think they're the same thing? Is soul the same thing as consciousness, or are they different? My answer to that is my conversation with Scott Olson, who's a major player he's written the great books on the golden ratio, and in conversation to him I talked about Mozart, and he said microtubules. So I didn't know what microtubules were, so now I know that they are like mini computers within the cytoplasm of the cell. And Scott believes there is a high possibility that consciousness manifests itself on the physical form through the microtubule in the form of very, very subtle vibrational form. And the way that happens is through the unwinding of the golden ratio. So, why did I say Mozart? Because the microtubules are in a proportional sacred geometrical relationship that links with Mozart's music. Like the piano sonatas of Mozart have the same proportional relationship as do the microtubules. Is this in terms of consciousness?
Yeah.
Or soul as well?
Well, I think the soul and consciousness are like linked or subtle, or like vibration.
Yeah.
Like frequency. For example, another example, I went past this building site with the guys who are building student accommodation, and the crash of the concrete, I was like, I couldn't stand it. But these guys there, they just didn't bat an eyelid. It's just everyday life to them. So Beethoven, for example, which I'll demonstrate in the talk in a couple of weeks, he can't hear. So he's able to hear the subtle inner sounds that come out of the silence. So there we get Madame Blavatsky's book, The Voice of the Silence, which was given to her when she went to Tibet. She went to Tibetan teacher, she ended up writing. So the voice of the silence, Beethoven can't hear a thing, but he can hear these subtle vibrations. The guys working at the building site, they don't bat an eyelid because their frequency is different to, I couldn't be in that environment. It would cause me to go deaf. But these guys aren't looking for that inner subtle vibration of the more subtle frequencies.
So if we tune ourselves into the more subtle frequencies, we're more aware of our relationship to them. I'm sorry, I know I'm keeping trying to go back. Do you, because there is a bit of a link between the way consciousness is described and the soul, like that they ask these subtle energies that come from a greater, like a drop in the ocean, for example, that we are one part of a wider, that has related to my studies in consciousness as well as it has in the soul. But I was wondering, from your perspective, if you think that they are the same thing, or two expressions of the same thing, or if they're very different things, or...
If I do Tai Chi like pushing waves, I'll push the wave against the shore. Like this is the yang expression. So the wave goes through the body. If the body is adapted for the energy to go through, it won't block. So I push the wave against the shore, and then I come back to the yin, which is the ocean. Which so in Theosophy we're on the edge of the shore, and we can't see the ocean. We can't see the depth of the ocean because we're looking from the edge of the beach. We can't see the mass, the real power, the mass of the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
We can't see that. So another way of is in 1 cubic inch of occult power, there is more power in the universe. In 1 square inch of occult power, in the implicate order, behind the physical form. Okay,
so in 1 square inch of the occult order.
In the implicate order.
In the implicate order.
That lies behind this is of the physical form, which is, to me, the Maya. It's impermanent. And
is that occult power, you said?
The occult power lies behind the physical form. So when I push the wave against the shore, then retreat back to the ocean, that's where all the power is.
So is that occult power expressed through soul and consciousness? Does soul and consciousness come from this occult power?
I would say yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So they both come from the same thing?
Yeah, absolutely. That's why, as I've got older, I don't feel a lack of energy because I'm able to tap into the implicate order.
Okay. And you're doing it through expressions in your body and understanding about moving different, so like building on the fascia, so stretches and things like that.
Yeah, the fascia allows the chi, which is immensely powerful, to pour through the body and out onto the shore. Then the wave returns because it's all wave particle duality.
Okay.
So behind this particle world is the wave. So I'm tapping into like a waveform behind the physical form.
Great. So that is, and that's described as life force energy, is it?
Yeah. So you may know that like a Chinese master is called empty force, where they can point their finger and then the whole row of people will topple over because he's using that force behind the physical world, which is empty.
Okay, so that's the same as chi, and that's the same as the occult power.
Yeah, it's called empty force, but they're tapping into it from an Eastern martial arts perspective.
And that's the same as consciousness and soul as well, then?
Yeah, because you would, like for example, I set up like in Tai Chi, my intention, my soul, my consciousness called Yi, will override the physical. So in Tai Chi, the intention is the Qi, which is called Yi. So the intention is to move the Qi. But if you're at a basic level, you're just thinking of moving the Qi. But progression would be, it's called Yi, which is your intention, your consciousness.
Okay.
So you wouldn't be moved.
So is your Yi like your willpower, or is that consciousness?
You could call it willpower. It's willpower linked to conscious intention.
So it's like steering something.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot about the force of will, isn't there?
Yeah.
That you can study about that feels like that focus.
Another aspect is if I develop chi, and then go on the squash court. I'll hit the ball, and the ball will start to move and dart as if it's defying the orthodox laws of science.
So, do you think that's a way of affecting? So your own energies affecting things that have left your body?
Yeah. The way I understand it is that it's like an etheric lattice, which we can't see. But if you develop chi, this lattice network, the ball bounces off it. So I'm watching the ball, it's as if it's being carried along by pockets of quanta. Mm-hmm. It's quite an amazing experience. The ball's being carried, it doesn't move in a normal way. And so I understand now that the reason for that is the ball bounces off this lattice network of etheric energy.
Is that yours, or is it that you're tuning into that affects?
I'm tuning in, and it's mine, but I'm tuning in. And what happens when I hit the ball to my opponent? They hit it back, and the same thing happens, but they've not done any work on their chi. I'm just saying that at that level of etheric vibration, you are truly connected with your other person. It's like synchronicity. At that level of vibration, you're connected with your opponent, and you become like one.
So by tuning into the etheric or occult power, like that, that's everywhere, that's part of you and everywhere else.
Behind the physical form.
Behind the physical form. So by tuning into that in yourself and outside of yourself, you're able to have a different relationship, and that feels like soul or consciousness, or is it just? It's not necessarily. Are they just like individual ways of expressing this zoomed out power that's everywhere?
Some people call the implicate order the Godhead, or the Tao, or the Great Void. They put different words to it depending on whether you're Christian or Theosophist or Buddhist. They would call it either the Tao, the implicate order, or God. So when I have this experience, I'm tapping into the reality. There is a higher reality. It tells me that there's a higher reality here, which I am able to access.
Okay, yeah. So it's like the subtle energies behind everything physical, and that's what you're tapping into in yourself and external. But how does, just to relate that back to the soul, like how does the soul fit into that?
Okay, another way of looking at it is what's it called? Playing in the, what's it called? There's a word for it when you play in the moment. There's a word for it. Playing in the zone, being in the zone.
Right? Or like in the flow.
Yeah. Being in the zone is being in the flow.
Yeah.
And so what happens is you feel like Harry Potter. You can do anything with the ball, and you think this is fantastic. And everything's so easy, and you're playing fantastic. And then when you think, oh, I want more of this, it leaves you. It's because the universe is being played through you at that level. The ego can't be part of that. And the ego can't be part of that. And everything's so easy. And there's something else I'm trying to say on that. It's just and that's because, like, sport and music, I would say, are the two biggest things in the world. And so that's where sports science is going towards. People are unknowingly trying to move towards playing in the zone where the universe plays through you. You don't play the game from your individual self. So the universe is that game.
Okay, so he's kind of saying that, like, soul and consciousness in terms of yours is just another way the ego is trying to find itself within the implicate order.
Well, you change because you realise that to play at that level, you've got to the idea of winning at all costs and beating your opponent into the ground has to go. It's like your opponent is much part of you as you are yourself. So it's it's a realization of that rather than the old way of I've got to win at all costs. You know, I've won. You know, great. You know, it's another way of understanding what the game is really truly about.
So do you kind of think maybe the soul is just an illusion of the ego to understand its relationship to the implicate order?
Well, yeah, I think, to me,
sorry, I'm just trying to understand.
Yeah, it's just I think I said to you, when I go and hear a piece of music now, I hear it so differently. I hear it in 4 or 5 dimensions, where before I just used to hear the melody basically, or maybe 1 or 2 other things, but now I hear it so much differently because my consciousness is changing to a different frequency.
So do you think like consciousness and soul is just a tool for us to tap into this energy that's behind everything, the subtle energies?
Well, my goal would be to go through a process of transfiguration of the physical form. Whether that could be achieved, I don't know. But that's what I believe Jesus did. You know, that's why they didn't recognize him when he appeared as this being of light.
Okay, sorry. So I'm just trying to like recap back from the beginning. You said the soul is the sort of metaphysical part of ourselves that goes on a journey through physical life in different physical manifestations.
Well, the personality goes on the journey in this particular life. You know, it's the personality that goes on the journey through the process of karma. Because this wasn't, I wouldn't have had this conversation when I was in my 20s, right? So you know, I ended up living with the homeless when I was 28. You know, so I never really wanted that to happen. You know, why did that happen? You know, at Saturn return. You know, if I'd have stayed married and happily, I'd never be talking to you in the way I am now. So that was like karma that I believe I chose prior to incarnation.
Okay,
So therefore, as I go through life, then my soul nature starts to become more dominant and starts to infuse, I believe, with the personality.
Okay, so it's about getting personality on the same page as soul.
Eventually, yeah, because you know, I'm having conversations with the guy conducting the orchestra at the Hall. I'm thinking, what the hell am I doing? Who am I to be doing this? But I have to start to reflect on, well, why not? Is it you? You know, you're not the person you were when you were 25. You know, you have to believe you have the right to be here and do it because your soul nature wants you to infuse and be there.
So the soul has a nature and a journey of its own.
Well, I see the soul in the background that when you incarnate, you're obviously not aware of, because as you probably know, we're sort of several dimensions where personality and the soul, but the personality tends to dominate until we have certain experiences, then we sort of cognize on our more eternal nature.
Okay. So the soul has a nature.
The soul, has a nature and a quest, a direction.
So it has a nature and a direction, and it has a journey that was lived in past lives as well. Absolutely. As it will be like continued forward in a lineage of lives ahead of this one. So our soul, soul is this etheric self. Is it like an individual?
It must be, because for me, music is the most abstract of all the arts. It's the most non-physical of all the arts. It's the most, for me, transcendental of all the arts. It doesn't exist in form. It just exists in vibration. You know, it's not like a painting. So I don't really respond greatly to paintings because they're in physical form. But music, to me, I just need to hear sound, and I'm there because it's the most abstract. It's the most transcendental. And therefore the most to me, connected with the soul, because the soul is non-physical, I would suggest. It's formless.
Okay, so it's on more of a similar level to that abstract realm.
Yeah.
That's like this occult power.
Yeah, and so as I get older, I feel more fitter than I've ever done, because I'm able to tap into that power behind the physical world and understand the nature and reality of that in terms of the bigger picture.
Okay.
And so
this occult power and the implicate order, that's the same kind of thing. That's that's behind everything physical, and for you, that's where the soul is within that, expressing itself individually through your physical body and in lots of other ways, like through music, which is closer to soul, and it's closer to that implicate order. And then everything, would you say, outside of yourself is another expression from that place? Yeah.
Like Carl Jung and Wolfgang Pauli called it the asymmetric dance of matter, the dancing cosmos. They feel the universe is a dance, so all the great spiritual teachers taught, like Jesus included, talk about the dance, Shiva dancing. So I get my I could say my biggest soul relationship when I see great dancers really expressing the body moving through space.
Okay.
So so that ties up with the music.
So with kind of physical expressions of...
I expressed that on the squash court, you see. The dance of movement, I was born with a certain physicality to express that in terms of the choice of incarnation. I chose to incarnate in an area with fantastic open playing fields where I could run all the time, you see. And so I feel that was a prior incarnatory choice.
So you think it's all like patterns of like the golden ratio that we're all playing out in this physical form that come from that
behind the implicate order.
The implicate order is expressing itself, but it's got the same patterns within the physical form as it does in its own.
Yeah, because they discovered that the quarks on subatomic level, the quarks and so-called tachyons, they stack up like a musical scale at the most smallest, profoundest subatomic particle. They stack up in a musical scale. So at that level of the macrocosm is linked through proportional relationship, through the golden ratio.
Yeah.
And in the cycle of fifths in music and all that, that's all
harmony.
Yeah, harmony. Yeah.
Yeah, synchronicity. Yeah.
So,
what do you think the purpose is? Is there a purpose, or is that not something we need to concern ourselves with? Or?
Well, I would say I don't want to keep coming back to this frequency. So the only way not to come back is to become more of a subtle vibrational frequency, because this is the world of samsara, and it's that I think there's other maybe realities we could go to.
Do you think it's through expression, like Beethoven? You were saying that he expressed his soul journey through his music.
Well, yeah, because if you listen to Bach's music, which is amazing, you don't really get to know Bach in the way that you get to know Beethoven. So if you tie that up with the evolution of social history, you're not going to get someone like Bach expressing deep personal suffering and the voice of intimacy as Beethoven did in the 19th century, because the individual was starting to come more to the fore in terms of wanting to express, like an artist wants to express themselves, where Bach, you don't really get to know him on a deep, intimate level, but the music is fantastic because he's putting it out there for God, like out there externally for God, but Beethoven is going inside.
Okay.
So like the new book by Edinburgh on unfolding consciousness, which apparently is amazing, but I see that through the unfolding of consciousness through the great artists and the way that the changes that took place through history. Yeah, because the 19th century, as you probably know, was the Romantic period for artists. So Bach, Bach's a different kettle of fish. It's fantastic music, but you don't really know him in the same way. And I'll try and express that in a couple of weeks.
So is that like inner world, inner universe expressions of reality from the subtle into
My greatest religious experience when I saw someone playing Beethoven's Hammer Clavier at the Usher Hall, one piano, one performer, and the audience sat in absolute silence, and there was no churchy stuff around. But to me, it was the greatest religious experience because of the intimacy and the idea of the crucifixion of the artist, and then the elevation of the artist with amazing creativity, because all that's left to him after he comes out from this near-death experience is to be creative, and so that's like a religious experience, a true religious experience, rather than obviously the present Queen, everyone's going to see real grief in that, but. And the irony was, when I turned the TV on, they said the march of the coffin towards Westminster Abbey was the Beethoven funeral march. But I checked that, and I don't think Beethoven wrote a funeral march, so I thought that was rather strange. Everyone thinks that he wrote it, but to me, he wouldn't have put his name to such a thing. His way of looking at that side of things is much more subtle and comes from within, rather than this out there funeral march with the thousands marching. Anyway.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Thank you. So, is there anything else you think we should know about the soul, or how we experience it? Or it sounds like what you've said is that it's to tune into the subtle energies, like of self, and in relation to where they come from. And
well, just to with you taking up some martial arts, you'll notice that everything in Tai Chi is spiralling and rounded. There's no straight lines. Obviously, there are no straight lines in nature. So, if you understand that, and one aspect of learning Tai Chi is you can embody all the qualities of the animal kingdom into the human form, which ties up with Theosophy, that we are, in a way, at the top of the tree, hierarchical. But we need to be compatible with the animal world and nature, so we can embody the qualities of the animal world into the human form, which makes us unique. For example, if you keep the spine supple, you can run really fast like the cheetah. So and I think that's another fun way, from an Eastern perspective, of looking at the reality of us as human beings. The shamanistic way, which isn't really to the fore in our Western culture, but it makes it fun to think of yourself in different animal forms.
And that, in terms of the soul, is like.
Well, yeah, the soul. If you do all that, the soul connects with dogs. I think the dogs pick up on it, or animals pick up on the attributes that you've embodied in you. I think they recognise it.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks very much. Thank you. Is there anything else you'd like to say? No.
Oh, I enjoyed that.
Yeah, that was good. Thanks very much. Bye. Cheers.
Hope it was interesting.
Definitely, that was great.